Hey everyone, in this video we're going to take a look at the Bitspower prototype blocks for the RTX 5090s. These two are going to be for the TUF right here and the Astral right here. You'll notice right away that they look very rough. These are prototypes, so they're not finished products, and obviously therefore they're not going to have kind of that complete fit and finish look that you're going to expect. However, the inside cooling plate is pretty much finalized. So what I'm going to be doing in this video is making sure that they fit correctly, and on top of that we're going to do some temperature testing. We're going to compare it to air, and we'll see how they perform. But quickly I want to go over the general design. You'll notice right away that this one has a different cut bracket. This is for the TUF. On the final version, they will all have this kind of square bracket and not this kind of angular cut that you see here. But I want to quickly talk about the block design. For some of you that have been familiar with Bitspower products, you'll notice that this is quite different. First of all, you have removable cover. This is not something you had with the previous Bitspower blocks. That is introduced with this generation. Oh, this is one piece of aluminum. As you can see that there's magnetic magnets here, obviously, for certain screw points that you can just attach. And if you look around the block, you'll notice that it's been pocketed very detailed so that it sits extremely well and very flush, right? There's no gaps or anything like that. These covers will come in anodized black. This is just raw aluminum, so don't expect anything fancy looking on this. I'm suggesting a silver. I don't know if you guys would prefer chrome or something more matte, preferably both. So if you have any feedback on what you would like to see, put it in the comments, so therefore I can let them know. Obviously you can see that this is spacing for the Bitspower logo, with probably the magnetic one is going to go here. But yes, it's going to be a square for all of them. Okay, so moving on to the block itself, you'll notice that we now have a core design, right? Previous Bitspower blocks, I have a used one here. It's still GPU attached, so don't mind the coolant in here. This one I pulled out of that sub build that I did recently. You'll notice that this has the cold plate for the GPU and everything just all in one, right? It's kind of like the EK design. But now they're moving on to a dedicated core design, very much similar to something from Optimus, something from, what's that? Heat Killer, right? So we'll take the back plate off. We'll just take a look here. Mind you, this back plate has these 4 holes here. This is not final. On the final one, you will not have the holes. So keep that in mind. So I'm going to take the back plate off, and then we're going to take a look at the design underneath real quick. All right, so these are using the same M2 screws that they used on the previous blocks, I believe. Once you remove these, I kind of wish that they would have this kind of more flush mounted. I personally don't like the bumped up look. But I think you would need a thicker aluminum plate to do kind of a countersunk, and it might be a smaller screw. And these screws are fairly soft. That's another thing that they are aware of. I kind of wish to, I guess down the line they may improve these screws to be less soft. And let's see. So once you take these off, I don't have instructions obviously since this is a prototype. Right, but from what I'm gathering is you will use these screws similar like the 40th series block I have over there, and you will use the existing 4 screws from the GPU on the cold plate retention bracket to then install the rest of the block. All right, so just let me take these out. That's up. Okay, so when I remove the back plate, you'll see that it's going to come with pads pre-applied, just like last generation. This obviously will come in black, anodized black. This is a raw aluminum sheet, as you can probably tell. So don't expect that, obviously, on the final product. But let's see. So here, obviously, this will be nickel plated. It's not going to be bare copper like this. Although, if you guys want bare copper, we can suggest it, right? So you see that all the pads are pre-applied, but here you can see that this is a cold plate design. That's different than what they used to do. From my understanding, and when I took it out, this is pretty much the same cold plate that they're using on the latest CPU blocks from Bitspower. So I'm eager to see the improvement this brings. From what I understand, they were trying to do this previously for the 4th generation, and it didn't happen. Also, the terminal is going to remain the same. I do kind of wish they would change the look of the terminal. It's not as attractive as I think it can be. But with that said, let's just move the block aside, and then we'll start first tackling the Astral. There are more coming. The Founders Edition is in progress, and there's also a Trio. I may get the Trio soonish. If I get the Trio block, I will test it on the Trio. I do have a Trio. So we're going to start with the Astral. This is the 4090 Astral. Those of you should... sorry, 5090 Astral. It's going to take a while for me to get used to saying that. But I've never taken this card apart, but following most ASUS procedures for removing their GPUs, I think I can figure it out. Okay, so this is going to be the Astral disassembly. For those of you wondering, the sticker here, that is not a warranty sticker, okay? That is just a sticker to show that whether you took it apart or not. So taking this apart is not going to void your warranty unless you physically damage something. So as with all things, when you're taking something apart, be very careful. A couple Phillips heads here, so we're going to get started here. I'm going to start by removing the corner. Preferably keep your screws somewhere safe when you do these things. So typically, there's a row of screws for the backplate, 2 here. These 6 typically hold down the GPU. Wow, this is a really big screw. These 4 screws typically, 6 are the ones that hold the cooler down the most. But like I said, this is my first time taking one of these apart, and we will just play it by ear. So I'm going to remove these. Okay, that's too small. All right. In terms of blocking an Astral, it seems like every water block company started with the Astral first, as well as the Founders Edition. How much it's worth blocking an Astral is really hard to say. I've used this. I have more than one, but this is one I've been using because I know how this one performs, so that's why I'm using this one. But generally speaking, I don't see the... if you bought this cooler, you probably bought it for the look because the premium is so high that you may not want to water block it. But if you're wondering why a lot of water cooling places kind of started with this GPU, is because this is kind of the GPU they got first, right? It's not because, they feel that people who spend such a high premium is going to go ahead straight away and block it. All right, so... But you know what? Before I take this completely apart, I just want to show you guys real quick. Since it's going to be a separate video, this is the TUF. Right? You can see that the cooler is much more substantial in the Astral. All right. In terms of actual cooling performance, it's just a couple degrees. It's not much. It's not a huge difference. And both of these GPUs are 24-phase, so you're not exactly getting a better power delivery setup on the Astral either. Well, outside of the monitoring here. So let's see. Hold on, guys. Ooh, it's already coming off. All right, so I guess there's less screws than I expected. Oh, okay. So I was expecting screws here. I couldn't see from that angle, but you can see that typically we have screws along the side here, right? So it seems like it's probably going to be the bracket here and somewhere along the front maybe it's holding it down. I'm used to having some screws in the front hold it down here. Most likely it's going to be these two. This is not uncommon. I'm definitely going to take some time to clean. No, it's probably not this one. This one going through? This one is not going through, so we're going to be going to this one. This one might be cutting into the cooler. Okay. Actually, it looks kind of short. From my angle, it's kind of hard to tell. Yeah, it looks like that one is touching the cooler. And this one, just in case it may be touching the cooler, I'm just going to remove it as well. So I've removed these 3 over here. Okay. So now let's remove the cold plate. It's already starting to come off. I think the front bracket would have came off at this point. Yep, the front fan shroud is off. It's just 4 corners for that. Obviously, when you're doing this, you want to be very wary of the fan cables you have here. You don't need to do this to remove the GPU, obviously. But just let me... You know what? Just let me remove it for the sake of this video. Okay, be careful when you're doing this. Do not pull too hard. So there we have the fan shroud. This shroud, as I was speaking in my previous video about the 5080 Astral, you can see that this is a solid aluminum core, right, from one piece. And then here you have another aluminum inserted piece in here. So you guys can see how this is put together. These look to be the same fans as the 40 series, the Axle fans. So technically, you could take these fans out. I don't remember off the top of my head, but I think you might be able to swap these fans for the 40 series ones, like the white ones, for example. I'll give it a shot. I do have them. So if you wanted to customize this cooler, you could. You could definitely, well, you would probably have to mask this part. I think this part is, nope, that part is also screwed on. So you can completely disassemble it. None of it is screwed. This obviously is going to be glued on, right? You can obviously kind of take this apart, then paint this, and then paint this, and you have a unique look, which is something I'm going to be doing. I just don't want to do it to my own because I don't want to totally kill my warranty on something that's fairly expensive. My personal cards, I tend to try to not to void the warranty on them, simply because, you know, I mean, I do it for like slightly cheaper cards, but this one is a little bit on the higher end, so I will try to keep it as nice as possible. And here we go. All right, so here we have the card, and I believe this fan is going to be still connected, so we're going to be super careful about taking that off. All right. Okay, guys, I apologize if you can't see it well on camera because I'm trying to be as careful as possible. Trying not to break something. I wonder why the back plate has not come off yet. Normally at this point, I expect the back plate to come off. Unless the back plate is still attached. At least the cooler should be coming off at this point. Let's see. I hear it. I hear it's coming loose, but I don't want to pry at it. You never want to pry at it with excessive force. Oh, there we go. Okay, so here comes the cooler off. You can see some of the pads are still stuck. I'm going to have to relocate those pads, obviously, because of the water block. But you can see the contact is actually very nice on the paste. So I've transferred the pads over because I'm going to have to put the stock cooler back on. Until, I guess, I won't be really using a steady water block until maybe whatever, this one, Thermo Grizzly, whatever is available first, that matches the aesthetic of the build I do plan on doing. I do plan on doing a dual 5090 Astral build. If you're wondering, SLI is dead. Yes, SLI is dead. But for my use case, for some AI workloads, two 5090s work just fine. Okay, they work together. You can pull the memory together, etc. So here we go. You can see the backplate is actually attached by the screws here. One thing I do want to point out real quick is that you'll notice that these pads, while I did not the world's best job in transferring back over, you see that they're exactly cut to size, and the cooler is actually, you know, kind of pronounced exactly where the memory chips are. All right, this is not something that you see on the previous generation or many other coolers where it's just one flat piece, one flat strip, and that's it. So I'm curious to see if that is going to be replicated on the TUF or not. So that's going to be pretty interesting. Obviously, that is an attention to detail that if you're just looking at the GPU on a picture, on a box, on a price point, you're not going to see. I'm not really, I mean, prices for these cards in general have gotten fairly ridiculous, but that some of, you know, I'm not going to go into politics here, but, you know, some of that really is, you know, people like to say it's just company greed. Well, you know, these things, I don't think you guys realize, I mentioned before, these things are made in China. They're not, just because the chip is made in Taiwan doesn't mean the card itself is assembled in Taiwan, right? They are made in China. Some of the cards are made in Vietnam, the lower end, which is now also, you know, has tariff imposed. So, you know, as a reflection, we're going to see that in the pricing, okay? While hopefully the 100% tariff, 154 or whatever, is not part of these kind of devices, and these do get excluded. Otherwise, they are literally unsellable. right? I mean, you have people that are willing to overpay for cards, but no one's going to want to pay, what, $6,000 for this? It's not going to happen. Although it's definitely someone has already, but that's a whole nother story. So with those screws removed, I see one more. I think this will free the GPU from the backplate. Obviously, at this point, we're going to disconnect the fan here. So once again, this. Yes, one more thing while I'm working on this card here. I saw the Bowers video about fan noise and something about the rear fan. I have two 5090 Astrals and up to, well, I only have 3 now, but I have 3 5080 Astrals, so I have 5, and they all use the same cooler. I do not have that issue on mine. Maybe because he got an early batch, like the, not the early batch, but the launch. At launch, there was a batch for press, and that's what he kind of received. I don't know if by the time I got mine, because I got mine well into the second batch, but my first 5080s were from that initial launch batch, and I don't have any of those issues. So, I mean, I did hear someone else having some fan issues, but personally, I have not experienced them, so I'm not going to say that they doesn't exist, but I'm not going to say based off one card that it is a known problem, right? I think that's fair, right? If your sample has it, I'm not denying that your sample may have it, but at the same time, just because your sample has it doesn't mean everybody's sample has it. And speaking of that, you'll notice that this is very well padded on the rear. This is another thing I brought up in my 5080 video, Astral video. A lot of these manufacturers for these cards, when you start seeing me take the trios apart, when that block comes in, and if I take the Zotac 5090 apart, which I also do have, you'll notice that these things don't exist. Okay, there's just nothing. And while pads are cheap, the time to cut them, put them on, these are, I mean, things matter like this, and this is, once again, a solid piece of aluminum. Right? It's not thin either, as you can tell. This was at most, it was at this one point, it was this thick, and it's been machined down to this thin, right? So these things all come into the money factor. Like I said, in my previous video, you may not appreciate that. That's totally fine and legitimate, but you cannot take away from a product that has more machining and material cost simply because it's too expensive to you. So now we move on to the TUF. You can see the Astrals on the side there. This cooler, I just want to quickly talk about it real quick. From my experience using this card and the Astral, I've had the Astral for quite some time now. This I got more recent. Cooling performance in games, I use, currently I'm using a setup where I'm using a Tri-X Luca, right? So it's a glass case, you know, aquarium glass essentially. When I've been playing Assassin's Creed on my free time at the AC Shadows, this card overclocked to the same speed as that one. They both hit about 3100 before I get crashy. So 3100 is game stable, not benchmark stable. Okay, benchmark stable tends to be a little higher. I would say on this GPU, I hit like 69 in my scenario, and this one is probably like 64. Okay, so it's about a 5-degree difference. It's not huge, but obviously the cooler is not going to be as that, right? So let's get started. So this is going to be hopefully more of a traditional removal. I'm going to start with this front here. I can almost guarantee you that these are going to be touching, so I'm going to remove that. Once again, I've never taken one of these apart either, so I'm going to play it by ear. But I'm pretty familiar with the ASUS cards. All right, so we'll start along the corners, moving the back plate. All right, so one more here. And I think they used a thermal paste pad there, and that's why it's kind of uniform. So let's see here. Take these screws out. For those of you wondering, once again, the gaming and it's just like there's a non-OC version of this, which you're probably not going to see anytime soon. But there's a gaming variant of this, which this is, and there's an OC variant. The price point is $200 different at this point. There was a launch one that was 2,000 of this, which I don't think anybody got because it probably didn't even exist. I was told it existed on launch day, but yeah, sure. Okay, but anyway, the $200 price point is negligible, given the whole pricing scheme these days. But they're the same card. Okay, even if you buy the OC variant, it's the same card, literally the same card. This is not going to be any more bin than this. Same thing, right? You're playing the silicone lottery. Don't believe that because you're spending more money, you're going to get something that overclocks better. That may be true for some things, like if you bought like a really cheap blower variant, which eventually will come out. Obviously, those while they have the same silicone lottery, they may not boost as high because the temperature curve is going to affect the boost clocks, right? So because the FE is a dual slot, NVIDIA has raised the base before clocks start dropping. So it used to be, I think, 55, right? So on 55 degrees, you would start losing clocks. Now I think that's more like 65 now. And then the really big one comes a little bit into the 70s, I think. I don't remember off the top of my head, but that's what I've noticed. But okay, so with that said, I should probably pay attention. Okay, so let me put this here. It should start coming apart soon. Okay, so the back plate is coming loose already. Alright, so okay, the cooler's coming off. Am I missing? Sorry guys, if you can't see this closely, I'm trying to see this as well, and I'm a little more distant. Okay, so I think the shroud is actually coming off. Yeah, I think the shroud is coming off. But it feels like it's attached by one more thing. Okay, yep. Same as on the Astral. This screw as well. Okay. Whew! Almost lost that. Alright, so this shroud should be coming off now. I think the fan cable is too short, so we're going to have to remove the fan cable on this one first. So we'll just take here. Once again, do not pull too hard. Wiggle slowly, slowly, slowly. Okay? And check your clearances, and here's the shroud. Now, this is 100% the same fans as the 40 series, I believe, because that looks really familiar. I'm actually curious to see if the 40 series shroud will fit. It might be a little bit shorter. But anyway, just let me clear some junk here, move this to the side. You know what? While I have this here, we can actually take a look. Let's just take a look, since I don't think most people have both of these cards. Oh, and those who do are probably not going to take it apart for you. So let's take a look real quick here. You'll notice that they appear to be the same fan, right? They appear to be the same fan. And yeah, let's see. There's the bracket. 330. Okay, it's different. But yeah, same fan. All right. But this is much heavier than this. It's much thinner. You can just tell. Some parts of this is plastic. Yeah, this is, wow. You know, I didn't even think about it till now, but this is plastic, guys. Yeah, it's plastic. This part seems to be plastic too. Wow, that's a downgrade. Pretty surprising that this is plastic. I guess I didn't think about it earlier because I was thinking, why did it feel kind of light? But yeah, so this used to be aluminum on last generation. Now it's plastic. That's a bit of a disappointment, but I guess maybe it's for these additional designs. They need a two-piece plastic instead of a single piece of aluminum like they used to have, where this was a solid one-piece last generation. Now it is a two-piece split, and it's also, yeah, I'm not a big fan. I think that they could have kept this as a one-piece. I mean, this is a separate piece, and then made this part metal, and then just have you screw this on. So this is a little bit disappointing, but you know, I think at these price points, this shouldn't be plastic. But then again, Zotac, MSI, they're all plastic. Even the Supreme, it's 2-part plastic, 1-piece metal. So it is what it is. All right. So it's not that they're not doing anything different than another manufacturer would. It's just I tend to have higher expectations for ASUS. So it is what it is. So let's see why I can't get this backplate off. All right. So let's try to get the... that's... feels like it's attached somewhere. So let's see if we can get the back plate off. I can hear the pads, and that's probably what's keeping it on. The back plate is metal, guys, so there's that at least. But why does it feels so stuck? It feels a little bit stuck on this one side. Yeah, you can see the screw here. There's a screw holding the back plate on. There's one screw right here. So that's why the back plate's not coming off. But the cooler does not look like anything is holding it on and should come off. Maybe with a little bit of encouragement. So as I expected, it was just the pads that was kind of forcing it into place there. But you can see here, there's individually cut memory pads because that's probably the same process as for the Astral. But you can see that they're not sticking out exactly where the pads are. So that you can see that that's an attention to detail that's a little bit different. But you know, before I transfer the pads over, let's just take a look at the heat sinks. All right. So let's just do some comparison on the heat sinks. As you can see, this is obviously much more bulky. All right, we'll put it on its side. I think this is actually probably similar to last generation. You can see that, right? Let me see that in the camera here. See, that's quite a difference there. You can also see the heat pipe difference, right? So, show you guys. You can. I think I dropped the pad. Yeah, I dropped the pad. I'm going to find it. But you can see here, right? So, there is some differences here that can be appreciated visually. So with that said, I'm going to transfer the pads. I'm going to take the back plate off. As you can see, I was saying there's actually 2 more screws, one down here and one over here that's keeping that back plate on. And then we'll take a look at the PCBs. All right, my apologies. There's more than 2. There's one here, one over here, and then the third one's over here. So a slight change from the previous generations, but this is similar to, I think, maybe the 3000 series or 2000. All right, so that's all the screws for the TUF, and we should have the backplate come right off. Once again, you'll see that there's padding, right? It's not as heavily padded as the Astral, but that's to be expected, right? Yeah, you get what you pay for. But once again, like I said, I'm not a fan of the fact that this is plastic. I find that quite disappointing. And I'm surprised I didn't think about it earlier. Okay, so here we go. So you can see that side by side, these PCBs. Let me move the camera up a little bit. So in terms of the PCB themselves, right, there's not much. Well, you get the PWM fan headers here, but you can see that in terms of power delivery, you are getting very much the same thing, right? So it really just comes down to the cooler itself, and I don't know who hooks up fans to their graphics cards these days, and the monitoring for this. Okay, let's look at the back. I don't expect any real differences here. Oh, there are some. Okay, so there's obviously a little more beefed up on the back over here, but so there are some subtle differences. Unlike last generation where the differences were so small on the PCBs that you could use the same blocks, you cannot this time. So now we're going to start the process with the Astral first. Astral first because this Astral block has never been tested. So we're going to check for contact. First, I'm going to remove the paste here. We'll clean that up, and then we'll start mounting this, and we'll check for contact. Since I'm being the guinea pig, essentially, what I'm going to be looking for is making sure that things are not supposed to be touching are not touching. for example, bare metal on any component here. Okay, so I'm going to quickly just clean that up, and then we'll get started. So I cleaned up the die. I'm just going to use Noctua thermal paste. Some of you, I know, are big fans of Thermal Grizzly. Personally, from all my use cases in the past, I never found it to be much better. And it's a little bit more messy to me, and I just find this stuff more consistent because I use it on everything. So that's why I'm using this. All right, so let me quickly first remove the pads here. And then hopefully we won't run into any installation issues. I just do this fat blop. And then I'm going to remove it anyway, just to check contact. So it doesn't really matter to me. But let's see here if everything lines up. This is the first time the block they designed is meeting an Astral. Okay? Because they're going off a CAD diagram. So they're not going to be able to tell without physically testing it. I mean, a lot of block manufacturers like to do kind of visual inspection, but obviously that's not going to compare to actually having it mounted. So at this point, I'm just checking before I tighten anything down to make sure nothing's touching. All right, so I can see right now that the pads are not touching the actual components. The pads are not touching. Let me just press this down some more. I don't know if you guys can see. It's probably hard to see on the camera, but you can see that the pads are not touching, like right here. It's not touching. You need a thicker pad, and that needs to be more machined down. I mean, it needs to be adjusted. See, the screws are kind of, yeah, it seems like it's a bit raised more than it needs to be. But let's screw it on and see. So at most, it's not going to touch, and it's not going to over cramp down. I have it on the edge of the table because I IO plate here, so I'm just going to tighten it down real quick, and then we'll take a look here. But so far, that's not a good sign. All right, I'm not going to peel these off first because I'm just going to do this real quick. All right, guys, so I've put on, it uses a stock retention bracket. All right, so I'm putting on these screws not too tight because I'm checking for flex of the PCB as I put them on. But as I put the back plate on and I was put the retention bracket on, I can see the pads that start touching where they're supposed to be. So, but I just want to make sure that it's not bending the card to do so, right? So that's one reason why I keep checking it for every screw that I put in. But so far it's looking pretty good. But it does feel like the back plate is bowing a little bit due to the retention bracket. It does look like it's bowing a little bit, very, very slightly. So yeah, this is definitely bowing a little bit. So that probably needs some adjustment. I was just told that they did try the TUF. So hopefully the TUF doesn't have this issue. But seeing that it uses the same retention bracket, and seeing the backplate, I don't see how the TUF doesn't have this problem. But obviously, like I said, this is a prototype, and we're gonna find out. But it looks like it's touching. I'm not gonna put it all back because I forgot. I didn't peel the pads, and I want to check contact. So I think I have enough screws in here just to see. So we're gonna look at the top again from my side. So it looks good here. It looks good from the top. Even if for guys, if you buy a water block and you're installing a water block, always do this check. Because even though like I said before, some of the blocks are just visually inspected to fit, it doesn't necessarily mean that you may not run into issues. I've had it over the years where I've had blocks that are visually inspected to fit, and then once I get the block and I start putting it on, I start noticing problems. And this is definitely, so you want to check at the bottom. You want to make sure that the PCB is not bowing by any chance, right? But you can see the back plate is bowing a little bit because of the retention bracket. Just want to check all your corners here. Once again, this is disappointing in that any heavy block, the bracket should somehow attach to the block. This will support it from sagging. Like you can see that if I hang it from this, it's going to sag. So that's some feedback I'm going to give. They had a bridge on the 2000 series that fixed that, but it seems like they forgot for the 3000 series. I think they forgot that for this again, like they did on the 40. So I'm gonna make that as a feedback. So let's just take apart. Let's just take all the screws out now again, and then we'll just see how good that contact is. We'll take a look at the pads. Again, do not over tighten these screws on the back, especially the first go around, because you want to double check to make sure everything's fitting. Okay. All right, so let's just take these all out. So for the back plate, I believe these are going to be anodized black. If there's any colors you guys, I was suggesting that for the cover and the back, that they offer white, like a kind of a white color. Like I said, that could be satin or gloss. I think a satin matte is better than a gloss, because I think glossy stuff tends to look cheap, unless it's done right. I don't think there's anything glossy in a computer that ever didn't look cheap. So that's why I would prefer non-gloss, but put in the comments what you would like to see. A lot of your feedback, Bitspower, like I said, is, trying to change up a lot of things. So a lot of your feedback will actually come into fruition more than you expect. You can see that this thing has bowed a little bit, right? So that's from the bracket itself. And one more screw dropped out. And let's take a look. So everything looks good here. Sorry guys, the I/O bracket alone is going to make me have to elevate this on the side of the table. And change my screwdriver. And let's take a look at the GPU. So we'll take a look at the core. We'll look at the contact on that. And if everything's all good, we will then proceed to test this after we block the TUF. All right. So let's hope this looks good. So contact looks good. It looks like the pads did touch. I do have the imprints, right? Deep enough. This one even stayed on, so that's good. So I think contact is not going to be a problem, but the backplate definitely needs to flex. It's going to have to be resolved. So with that said, I'm going to put this back with the pads removed, and then we'll move on to the TUF. The block is on. The cover, unfortunately, is not going to be able to go back on because this part is not cut out for the HDMI. This is something obviously addressed if you look at the TUF version of the block. It's addressed here. From my understanding, there's another version of this that's more final since this arrived to me. So that one probably has this addressed. So we'll try it. The cover not going to impact the performance, so we'll try it without the cover. But so far, contact looks good. Everything looks good. Size-wise, it's nice to see. And I think the covers are important because no one wants to see this big-ass, curve here. It's not attractive. But all right, so let's just start with the TUF. We'll move this to the side. Okay, so we're going to take this block apart. I'm going to pull the covers off because it just gets in the way. All right. Once again, guys, whatever covers you like to see, I've been told they may consider selling the covers separately so you can paint them, powder coat them, do whatever you want. But, it's all about customization, especially when you're spending this kind of money. So on the card and then the block. So anything you guys want to see, put it in the comments. This way I can relay that information forward, and that way everybody has some input and we're more likely to get something that we want to see, right? Not many manufacturers from this perspective take direct input, but the great thing about Bitspower that, for example, advantage that they have over something like EK or something like that is they produce everything on their own, essentially. So they can make the order. They don't have an MOQ when they make an order. So they can try one-offs. They can try separate things. They can just make one or two and we can see how it looks. And then, it's not like EK or somebody. For a lot of the things, they have to maybe get order 10,000 or 1,000. And if it don't work out, then you're just stuck with 999 of them. So it's very flexible. So anything you guys want to see, put in the comments, within reason, obviously. Don't go, hey, I want a 10-inch screen on my water block, okay? But yeah. So I'm just going to remove these. And you'll see that it's the same kind of style as the other one. All right, so same type of deal here. You see, I don't see how this is not going to bulge like the other one. But I like how someone drew here. Memory goes here. But anyway, wow, this one's been mounted. I see some thermal paste. So I guess they've tested this one. Well, but I don't know the performance, and neither do you, so let's test it too. So I've installed the TUF block. On this back plate, you can see that they've actually pocketed out around the screw. So the screw can go in without bumping out. At this point, they might as well use a flathead screw, right? So that way it's more flush. But I think this back plate may actually be a little thicker too. If I look at this one, is it thicker? Yeah, it's the thicker back plate, you can tell. So because that pocketing operation on here would have made it extremely thin. But you can tell that this is probably more close to final, right? But yeah, so this one even has the RTX 39 TUF and the Nebula here. But yeah, so it's not going to have this on the final as well. But there's the bowing here. It's not as significant as on the Astral, but it definitely is present. I don't know. I mean, it's so minor. So this one you can barely tell. It's so minor that I don't know if there's a nut that's just slightly taller. Or maybe just a washer, right? A washer would fix it. The screws are long enough. So I think, if you just had a washer, like a 1mm washer included or something like that, or like 0.75mm washer, it would get rid of the bulge. That may be a solution, right? I'm just going to tighten these down some more. But yeah, so this definitely is a more flushed out block. I can tell that just by the assembly process. But yes, so now we will move on to the performance testing. So what we're going to do is I'm going to install these into a test system with the 7800X3D. I do have 9000X3D, but the FPS is not the main concern. The temperature is the main concern. So what we're going to do is we're going to hook this up to Aquabox from Singularity Computers. We will monitor the water temperature. We will check the delta of the block to the water temperature as it goes. So with that said, let's just get this in the system. We'll start with the Astral, and then we'll move on to the TUF. So I have the Astral hooked up. It is hooked up to a Singularity water box that has two 240 radiators. So effectively, this is 480 millimeters of rad space. It is single DDC, just running this loop and nothing else. So right away, you can see that the water temp is 24 degrees. There's currently about 22.8 in the room. So water temp is close to ambient, and we have a delta of 2 degrees on idle. I'm going to use GPU tweak, as I think that's probably more accurate than anything else, as that is an ASUS thing. So, but you can still also see the VRAM, which I don't think the others capture yet. If you hear bubblies in the back, that's because of the bubbles from the loop. So here we go. I'm just going to start with Furmark. I'm clicking the computer through. I'm going through a screen capture, so it's pretty small. So if I'm misclicking somewhere, you'll know why. And it looks kind of tiny for me too. But right here, you see that we are drawing 100% of the power target, which should be 600 watts. I think that's, 599, 600 right here. So we are pretty much going all the way. And let's just see what happens. All right. The time is, it says 5:50. I'm going to let it run for, I think even within 5 minutes probably equalized, but I'll let it run for 10 minutes and then I'll just see what happens. But you can see that, this is in the way. All right, so I scoot that aside. Not that you couldn't see it here as well. My GPU temp is already 49. So compared to water temp, that is a 21C delta at 600 watts. I have nothing to compare it to. So I'm not sure how amazing this is, but 600 watts is quite a bit. You're not going to really hit this when you're gaming. What I'll do after this is I'll load up Black Myth Wukong and just kind of standing game. Because I haven't played in so long and I can't play through the screen capture. It's hard to see. But that would be more of a demanding game that's, I think, more in line with what you would expect to see for daily use rather than this. Okay, so I'll let this run for 10 minutes. I'll keep it recording the entire time and we'll see what happens. And so that's it. All right, so it's a little bit close to about 10 minutes now. The fans on the water box did kick up a little bit, so I saw the water temp drop a little bit. But overall, you can see that I'm pretty much maintaining 20, 21-ish once it kind of stabilized out. So I think that pretty much is going to be... I mean, if I feel the radiators, they feel warm, but they don't feel heat-soaked at all. So I don't think additional rad space is going to change this much. I mean, I haven't drawn... No. From what I recall, drawing on average about maybe 480 to 500 on the heat killer for the 4090 with the ultra cold plate. I think my delta was like 12, 14 with two 420s, something like that. So I'm curious to see what this would be in a more standard use case. So at this point, I'm going to stop for a mark and I'm going to see if I load up Black Myth, what it's going to be. So here it is in Black Myth. You can see that I'm about 83% power target. So let's just say that's about 500 watts, right? High, close to 500 if we do the math, right? 100 being 600, 83% is going to be in the 480s, something like that. You can see it's 99% usage. This is with frame generation off and everything kind of packed up. So you can see I'm stressing the GPU fully. I don't know why I suddenly dropped to 0 there. It could be just that because, like I said, I'm going to a capture card. But you can see that the GPU temperature is pretty much 49C, right? And I think my water temperature is... 1 second here. Sorry. Let me get the other keyboard. My water temperature is going to be about... If I get it up here... 33. All right. So... 34. So we're about 14 degrees on the delta, right? So nothing too, this is decent, right? You're under 50 at almost 500 watts. I'm pretty sure, like I said, if I kept this running, you'd probably say the same. How much is would affect an overclock? I'm not too sure. Like I said, then again, this is not overclock right now, but even if I were to overclock it, the gains are so minimal. Well, you know what? Let's just go for it anyway, real quick. See if I can do this on the fly. All right. So I know this. I don't like how GPU Tweak doesn't let me type in the numbers. At least for me, for some of the versions, I can't type in the numbers. I'm just gonna bump this up to 3,000 because I know it goes to 3,000. We'll just put about, I think this does 200 on the core, right? So just apply that. Come back here. Okay, so I definitely got more room. Let me see. It's going to crash if I keep going because I think I normally run at 250 on this at most. Let's just see here. Sorry, guys. It's really because I'm going through a screen capture. It's not like on a monitor. What is on a monitor, just not the way I prefer it to be. So, where's my mouse? Did I gone and lose my mouse? I gone and lost my mouse. All right. One more time. All right. So, let's just bump this up. Can barely see that. And hit that out again. All right. So, 3045 doesn't seem to be going anymore. Yeah. So, at times when it's cooler, it'll hit 31, but 99% load, I don't think it's going to hit 31. If I run around, You may get more room for you, you may not. And like I said, I don't think the temperature is low enough to make a difference, not at 50 degrees. But I did notice that I didn't mention earlier is that the VRAM temperatures are kind of uneven, right? So we come back to here, you'll see that you have 65 here and it's 53 over here. Remember when we put the block, well, when I put the block on, I had mentioned that the contact didn't look proper until I set all the backplate screws in and it wasn't touching certain parts. This may be something that needs a little bit of tweaking. It may be a little bit more on my end because I wasn't really fully ready to tighten them all a lot, simply because, well, you know, it's the first time that block has touched an Astral and I don't want to damage something, but it is on secure enough that, you know, there's nothing to give without really cranking it down. So I think this situation here with the unevenness is a little bit something that probably needs to be looked into. But like I said, the TUF is more flushed out. So we'll put the TUF in now and see if that's any different or any better. The TUF, trying to think off the top of my head, I think it pulls about really close to 600. Let's see if we can get it. I don't think we can get it to 600. But we'll find out. So I'm going to take the card out and swap it for the TUF. But, you know, 20C is not bad at 600 watts. And this is what? This is about 15C at regular gaming, like fully loaded. It's not bad either. I don't think, you know, it's not like you might be thinking, oh, remember the days of under 10 degrees Delta? Yeah. For a 300 something watt card, you know, fine. High 400, close to 500. I mean, it's not really as ideal, but I don't think this will be the best performing block that comes out. Obviously, it's a new design. It's still prototype. So with that said, let's just swap to the TUF. So the 5090 TUF is in now. The TUF does not have all these sensors that you would have on the Astral. So in GPU Tweak, you're not going to see all that information like you just did with the Astral. But looking in Tech Power GPU-Z, you can see that with the plus 4% given here, it is supposed to go up to 600 watts with a default minimum of 575. So with that said, you still can see some of the memory temperature here, 38. But that's not going to be, you know, all cross like we could see on the other one, was more detailed. So what we'll do now is we'll just run. Oh, you know what? Hold on 1 second. Let me bring up AquaSuite. All right. So you can see my water temperature starting is at 23. It's had some time to cool down, and then we'll just start this right away. So pulling at, what is that? VRAM temperature says it's 42. Is that? I think that's 557. Oh, 596. Sorry, it's right there. Okay, so you can see right here, you know, it's about 600, just like the Astral. And we'll just keep an eye on the temperatures here. I wish it was as easy to see on this side. Let me see if I turn on the OSD here. All right, I think I need to reload this to load this. But you can see there, the GPU temperature is 46. And we will keep the water temperature in the back. Just to kind of line that up. So you can see so far we're hitting 21 already, right? So that's kind of in line with what we were seeing on the Astral block. Like I said, similar power draw, same core design. I wouldn't expect it to be much different in terms of performance delta. But we'll just let this run for 10 minutes. It's 600, so it's about the same. And we will see how that goes. So it's 7:04 right now. I will come back at 7:14. 10 minutes is more than enough. And we'll see where it's at. You can see that it's been about a little over 10 minutes. Pretty much I'm maintaining 20 degrees over. So it's similar to the other one. What we'll do now is we'll jump into Black Myth. I don't expect anything to be different. I just want to quickly take a look at the VRAM temperature. Memory temperature is 70C. So it seems like it's a little higher than the other one. That may be an issue. So I think the pads may need to be a little bit thicker. So you know what? I'll probably take the blocks apart and try with thicker pads myself, just to see, because that's a little bit I don't know if that's the wrong reading, but that's kind of too high. So yeah. So with that, we'll just stop this right here, and we'll go into Black Myth. I'm just going to quickly apply an overclock I know this card can hit, and then we'll just come in here. You can see that it's 45 degrees loaded up. I think the water temperature right now is 31, right? So I never let it drop. I started the game immediately. So that's 15 over, right? So similar power draw, if we look at the numbers, 86% off of what? Essentially 600. So with that said, it's going to be hanging around here. So temperature-wise, very similar to the Astral block. Obviously, the memory is something that I need to take a look at. What I haven't done yet so far is show you guys the air performance. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the blocks back. I'm going this way. It's kind of pasted by me, not the original factory paste application. And we'll run the Furmark on air just to show you guys with AutoFan what the differences are, and we'll go from there. All right, guys. Furmark's been running about close to 10 minutes now. But as you can see, it's hitting 65. This is on the 5090 TUF. I think we were hitting mid-50s earlier. So, and you also see that the memory temperature is the same. So in a game, this can be a little higher than Furmark. So it can be like 80 C inside the game. Or maybe a little bit over that over time. So the water block for the TUF, the prototype, keep in mind, guys, these are all prototypes, that the memory temperature is going to be fairly the same. I think, I took it apart again, looking at it. I think the pads, if they're 0.5 millimeter thicker, it may be a little bit better. I'm going to try that separately, but not in this video. But you can see that, it's a 10-degree drop, which is not significant. It's not insignificant, but it's not, when it comes to the investment of an entire loop. I mean, this is in the case, once you have your headphones on, wherever, you're not really going to hear 65% fan either, right? That's kind of what it's at, 66% fan. So we're going to look at the Astral next. But you can just call it, I guess you can say the coolers are impressive, pretty much, right? I'm drawing almost 600 watts, 65C, right? So let me stop this and we'll put in the Astral and take a look at that. All right, guys, we're coming across the 10-minute mark. I just want to show you guys real quick that you see here, memory temperature is reading at 70, but if I look at GPU tweak, it's about 10 degrees cooler with the exception of this side. So I'm not sure how accurate this is right now, actually, on GPU-Z. Since it wouldn't report it for me on the TUF, I'm going to assume it might be a similar scenario, that it might be just 8 degrees cooler or so, give or take. So if you look at the memory temperature when it was on the block, I don't think it was much different. But you know what? Let me take a look. I do have the record. So I'll take a look. And I think on the memory temperature at that time, the memory temperature was about the same. So actually, the memory temperature is a little cooler on the Strix block. So there's definitely some issues with the block in terms of on the TUF with the memory. Like I said, I'm going to try the 0.5 thicker pad. But yeah, that pretty much wraps it up. For you guys wondering, hey, how come the temperature is also 65, 66, same as the TUF? Yes, the temperature is pretty much the same as the TUF. But the one thing I can tell you is that the TUF is a little bit louder at the same fan speed, even though it's both reporting about 60. A TUF is a little bit louder, not much. I've ran both of these in an inside enclosed case, in which case the Astral is a little bit better, like 3-4 degrees in an enclosed closure, but nothing really to cry home about. But like I said, like I've mentioned before, a lot of it really comes down to the other stuff. But with that said, If when I get more blocks in, we'll test those. But thanks for watching. Stay safe and take care.